Hello, and welcome to Snide's Return, a tabletop roleplay podcast. My guest today has been on quite the journey through the Radiant Citadels, Fey Realms, easily 20 or more dimensions, and completed a dungeon run or two. Her quest to bring us the best tabletop experience has seen her portal to the land of ice and fire, stand tall at conventions of big bads, and even have time to air some dirty laundry in public. Here to chat with me today is Roleplayer, TTRPG content creator, dungeon master, and in her critical role as the head of marketing and communications for Quest Portal is the wonderful Surena Marie. Surena, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Surena, before we get into some of the things I alluded to there in the introduction, how did you get into tabletop role-playing games, please?
Sure. So I actually started playing tabletop role playing games, a long time ago with some friends back in Arizona. That's where I'm from. And I had a friend who was a game designer. His name is John Wick. And he, I think, was a designer on Seventh Sea and a couple of other indie games that he had created. One of them, Houses of the Blooded. He was the partner to my partner's sister, so it was like through family. But he would run these immersive, big, epic games, and this was before I really I was an actor for a long time, and so stepping into his role-playing games was essentially stepping into like an improv scene.
Hmm.
So it was very like again immersive, and my first game wasn't D&D, it was actually Changeling.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that was super fun. We had a Changeling campaign for a while. I've played Vampire the Masquerade. Then I moved to Chicago for improv, and I met my husband Carlos Luna there, and he played D&D one time and decided I'm going to do a podcast after his first session, and I was able to play on that podcast with a couple of other like improvisers from Chicago,
Hmm.
and it kind of blew up a little bit, and that's how I came into the tabletop RPG space. But it was very much a love of games that brought me here, and
Hmm.
it's sort of like a zigzag journey, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So going from sort of the improv heavy introduction, going through your own change with Changeling, that sounds
Mhm.
very tedious, but we'll go with it. Going through that, the move and all the rest of it, and getting introduced to sort of the podcasting side of stuff. Where
Mhm.
did you where did you go from there? Did you start running your own games? Did you appear on more shows? What was your sort of journey through tabletop from that sort of
So
initial start point?
yeah, so our podcast, it started, I think, in towards the end of 2016, and so it was before a lot of D&D podcast and streams really like hit more like mainstream.
Hmm.
So our podcast, it ended up being 2 seasons and pretty like successful, and it got the attention of the folks at Dungeons and Dragons. And so Greg Tito contacted Carlos and Tanya DePass, and they put together the team for Rivals of Waterdeep.
Hmm.
So the journey to Rivals started then, and from there, our first stream as Rivals of Waterdeep, by the way, was at Stream of Many Eyes. So
Hmm.
like we hadn't played D&D previously before together. Some of us on that team hadn't played at all, and they put us up, and we had to perform Dungeons and Dragons in front of like everyone,
Hmm. Yeah.
and writers and big people in the space, and so it was really intimidating, but it was fun, scary but fun.
No, that's amazing. I've been lucky enough to chat with Tanya DePass, Greg as well, Greg Tito, and even Brian of Rivals, and they've sort of each given me a glimpse as to how things came together. But you're the
Mhm.
first person to really sort of bring all of that into the light with that first
Oh.
sort of initial meeting. It's incredible. And Rivals being such a fantastic show, please support Rivals any way you can. Also, your own content that we'll get to in a minute. So, moving on from Rivals and the Stream of Many Eyes, did you stay within that role playing, or did you move into content creation? What was your path from there?
Yeah, so, with Rivals, I think, when you're working on a show, there's a point where and also with my podcast too that I, was on, there's a point where you go, "Okay, like, this is something that is more than just a show up and play type of situation." Like, there's a lot of, thought that you have to do with, like, how you're marketing the show, how you're, handling social media, how you're
Mm,
building communities around the show, how, and if you're going to panels and talking about, um, aspects of, like, the game or, using your personal
mm,
experiences that way. So I think sort of while I was in Rivals, there's a switch started to happen with how I was viewing content more from like the back end. So,
mm.
and previously, like my day job at that time, I was an HR generalist. So, figuring out, like, communication has always been, like, a part of, like, how I work.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think it was, I had this weird 2019 was this big sprint for me. Um, I had just, graduated college, so that summer of 2019. Um, and then Carlos and we got married at the end of 2019. And then I started interviewing for a role at Critical Role at the end of 2019.
Wow.
So that all happened there. And there was a long interview process for that, but I moved to Los Angeles from Chicago. I think February of 2020, so right before the pandemic like kicked off.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, and got the role there as their marketing and community manager. So it was kind of like utilizing the skills that I had learned from the back end of marketing the shows, plus my previous experience as HR,
Mm,
led me to like that opportunity, which is really cool. And I learned a lot from the crew there about content creation, you know, understanding how a show is made from beginning to end, um, and how much work really goes into their content.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Working in the entertainment behemoth that is
Yeah.
now Critical Role. Obviously, it has grown exponentially the last few years and has spread across. And your time with Critical Role came to an end, and you moved on to do new things. But what
Mhm.
were um, what were some of the experiences like watching um, just just the whole thing, and this is more again from the back end side of things, because we've all been lucky enough to watch the show and how
Yeah.
they perform and what a great cast they are, but watching it spread into different social media aspects, different
Mhm.
markets, and people's lives, what was it like to be a part of that, and what have you taken from that and brought forward with you?
Sure. It's so fascinating how fast everything grew with Critical Role. Like when I first was brought on, we had I think one or two licensing partners, and I would manage that relationship. It was with the amazing folks at Dark Horse Comics. And then by the time I left, I was managing probably like 20 other relationships. Um, and it to see the passion that everybody has, but then all of a sudden there's cookbooks,
Mm,
there's um, Funko Pops, there's sideshow figures, there's like all of these projects like
mm,
spinning out. There's novels, and I think at least on the back end, it's a lot of heart, but a lot of everybody going, "Oh my god, how did we get here?" You know, and doing our best and to navigate how rapid it had been.
Mm. Yeah. So you have sort of worked alongside a team that have a phenomenal cast, but it's not the only phenomenal cast you've been a part of, a player of, in
Yeah.
fact.
Yes.
You have sat and rolled dice with what I consider to be the greats of our hobby at the moment. Uh, Sort of the what was it like? I'm too excited to ask the question, but what was it like being part of the Dimension 20 Court of Fey and Flowers series? What was that experience like?
It was so much fun. I get overwhelmed when I think about it because, like, I think when I joined the cat were asked to do that show, I hadn't performed in a while, and I had just, stepped my foot back into the space,
Mm,
and so I think initially I was very nervous. I'm sure, as you can imagine, like, 1, to be asked, and 2, to be able to tell an incredible story with, like, people who are so talented and
mm,
so, like, thoughtful in how they role play. Um, but I think, like, as soon as we all met each other and as soon as, like, we started, like, with our session 0 and figuring out, like, what we wanted to do and what the theme of the show was, I knew it was gonna be, like, uh it was gonna be really fun and really complicated, but in, like,
mm.
a good way, because we didn't have, open character creation. Um,
Okay.
yeah, in a lot of shows, you create characters together
Mm,
and you create relationships together. But in this one, because of the rumor aspect and the idea that we wanted to really introduce like good society mechanics
mm,
and gossip and intrigue, none of us knew anyone's secret, and so it just led for such interesting role play where you're we're actually figuring it out in real time what the other person's deal is,
mm.
and, I think that's kind of magical.
Yeah, no, it came across as encapsulating, enthralling. So I can only thank you for being part of such a wonderful creation. You a few things that you mentioned there in the answer. Session 0, as a player, as a dungeon master or games master, how important to you are calibration or safety tools at the table, and which are your preferred ones? Obviously, you've used some with certain tables, but which ones are your preference and importance?
I think that safety tools are an absolute must, especially if you're performing it like live in front of people
Mm,
or any tabletop RPG content. Um, because there is this thing that happens where if something goes wrong at the table, and if you're an like a person with high anxiety,
mm,
some people might not speak up when things are off the rails or causing discomfort because they're thinking about the show. They're thinking about, I don't want to derail the show. I don't want the audience to know, all of these other things that happen on the back end.
mm,
So establishing ground rules up front, like whether it be a lines and veils, I think that's usually pretty standard across like every game I've played. But also like if things go um, in a way that's uncomfortable for the player, what they can do in game. And
mm,
so I've played at tables where we're streaming, but there's little cards on the table that they can subtly put their hands on,
mm,
which is I think a really cool subtle like thing. Also, some people will do an X with their fingers or an O with their fingers. But I feel like if you're talking with your group up front, like, and having like a good, like, your session 0 is part game, but it's also like a big vibe check. It's just
Yeah.
it's an open forum discussion. Let's talk about it because games are allowed to get dark.
Mm.
You can explore like really gritty themes. You just all have to be on the same page when those topics come up.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
So another thing you mentioned there was the use of sort of the good time society mechanics.
Yes.
You started with Changeling and have
Mhm.
sort of gone into darker themes. Vampire the Masquerade was another one. Are there any game systems you're yet to play that you really like to have a go at?
So funny you mentioned that. I'm actually, this evening playing Fiasco. That is, a system I've been wanting to play for a while because from my understanding, and I haven't played it, so this could be incorrect,
Mm.
but, the relationships and the, plot and all of that are decided by cards as you're playing the
Okay.
game. So there's not, like, upfront character creation, and the vibe, from my understanding, is like creating like an action film or a movie.
Okay.
So, yeah, that sounds super fun.
It does sound a lot of fun. It's something I'll have to check out at some point. And links to that content will be down in the description below this content. While I mention links, Serena, would you mind letting everybody know where they can find your good self and everything you're associated with, please?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at Serena X Marie, or you can find me on Instagram at Serena X Marie as well. I think I did the same. That's good. I did that. It's consistent. But if you like adorable illustrations, you can find me also on Instagram at Serena is a bee.
All right. Well, I will make sure the links are down in the description below this podcast. Also, to the shows you're associated with, one of which you mentioned there, the Fiasco game, which is going to
Mhm.
be a cyberpunk game. If I've read
Yes.
the hype, the sort of the pre media, and that's with the Dungeon Run team.
Yes.
So, how did you get involved with the Dungeon Run team, please?
So, I had just filmed, I think finished filming Court of Fey and Flowers, and I was
Hmm.
excited to kind of get back into the space. And Morgan, who has been a friend on mine on social media on Twitter for, gosh, for a while, he messaged me that he was holding auditions for his show, and I it was just like, "Sure, why not? Yeah, I'll audition," like, completely, like, not expecting anything, just,
Hmm.
I just wanted to show up and play with people because I missed just gaming, and, we had a little, like, chemistry game, and we all clicked super well, and the next thing I know, I was asked to be part of it.
Wow.
Mhm.
And you've been with them for a little while now. At time of recording.
Yeah, I would say almost like maybe 9 months, 10 months, almost a year.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
And long may that continue. To be fair, uh, so you've gone and sort of dipped your toe back in, or fully immersed yourself back into the TTRPG role playing space
Mhm.
as a provider of content as a player, a role player, but you've also provided something back to us uh, DMs for Dungeons and Dragons with Journeys Through the Radiant Citadel. How did you come to get involved with such a? I don't know if iconic is the right word, but it's a beautiful book, and it is a standout piece, I believe, in the Dungeons and Dragons releases of the last, well, since I've been playing, which isn't very long, but the last 10 years at least.
Um, so I was asked by, my dear friend, Ajit, and Ajit George.
Hmm.
My brain decided it wanted to freeze. But he basically put together a dream team of people who were, some were writers for like DM's Guild and had published a lot of their own supplements. Some people were sci-fi writers. Some people were video game writers. So
Hmm.
it was just sort of this um, collective of incredible writers of color who had really unique perspectives in how they play games and how they digest media. And so for me, I was asked, due to my experience with theater and comedy and also um, streaming as well. So,
Mm,
from a performer standpoint, so the adventure I wrote, Salted Legacy, is definitely designed to be streamed. Like,
mm,
it is designed for a new party of players. It has so many like NPCs and conversation points that kind of create a lively market game
mm.
with maybe I would say cozy stakes because it's not
Okay.
end of the world stakes, but it is an intimate game.
Okay. Like end of the street rather than end of the world.
Yes, end of the street.
Nice.
Yes.
And it's the first adventure within the book, so people will turn to it and enjoy your content. And you've actually done a DM's run through of it using, I think it was Roll20 at the time.
Mhm.
Uh, so what has it been like, not only to create the content, but sort of step through it for the benefit of those who, like myself, who appreciate the guidance of those who have seen inside the mechanics and the lore and all these sorts of things?
Um, I will say running your own adventure is really scary because if you're wrong about something, then it's like extra wrong because you wrote it. um, but what I really like about the mechanic side of the game is that it is a renown based system. So I can see some people, as they're playing it, maybe get a little frustrated that they can't charm their way with a high like charisma check
Mm,
to get exactly what they want. But I think that it's important to examine, um, especially the games found in that or the stories found within that book, from a human lens and
mm.
like in communities. It doesn't matter how charming you are. If people don't trust you, they don't trust you,
Very true. Very true.
right? And
Mm,
so I think that through line of you have to uh, and but also how do you gamify trust, which is it's hard, so that's
mm,
why the market games exist to sort of gamify participation within their culture, um which is a fun way of doing that, but like the root of it is like, hey, like when you're traveling, when you're going out to different places, you can't expect to be the main character
mm.
when there are people living their lives and making a living for themselves as well.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's uh, all very useful stuff. And uh, you have sort of carrying the market theme through and building renown and trust. You've been out doing cons. You were at cons last year, Big Bad Con. What was that like?
Big Bad Con was it is to this day my favorite convention I've ever been to. Um, I went to it in 2019 as a recipient of a scholarship.
Mm,
And from that, I was able to meet people and network, and is how I got like the role that I had at Critical Role, essentially. Like I was
mm,
able to make really, really meaningful connections and mentors through that. And so going this year, I was a part of the leadership team, and so,
mm,
yeah, it was really impactful to be sort of on the other side and helping, the other POC scholar recipients, making sure that they feel taken care of during the convention, making sure that we are collectively selecting a wide variety of people in the space, from designers, illustrators, streamers, um, and other creators that aren't maybe as predominant as some of the big names you might see, because they
mm.
have opportunities. They have already the networking required to move within the industry. And so going to that convention and seeing everybody, it made it all very real. And I think it's a very powerful convention
Mm.
for uh, people who are often marginalized within the space.
And it's always good to reinforce the inclusivity. It's not like
Hmm.
diversity is a bad thing. Diversity is a fantastic thing, giving us the opportunity to learn, but we must also be inclusive with that diversity.
Yeah.
That sounds like a very weird way of saying it. But so, with sort of that perspective in mind, is the TTRPG community, are we moving in the right direction for inclusivity and diversity in your opinion? I'm sure there's more to be done, of course.
I do believe so. I think that um, it's change takes a really long time. Part of my degree is was in like change management,
Mm,
and so like they basically like teach you that like a company, if the tabletop RPG space is a company, which it's not, it's many communities, but if it were,
okay,
um and it's been around, for I don't know, maybe let's just say the 80s. I know it's been around longer, but let's
we'll go
just
with that's a baseline.
say,
We'll go with that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, then it's going to take a long time for everything to be course corrected in a way that everybody feels inclusive, because the community has been established for a really long time.
Mm,
And change, I think that sometimes, especially online, we can grow impatient, because we want everything to be good now.
mm,
And that is our hope for everything, right? We want everyone to feel invited and included. But I think that for the last 4 years, we've seen such a rapid change given how deep the roots go, if that
mm.
makes sense.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really proud of a lot of my friends and people that I admire in this space, being advocates and continuing to do good work and bringing new people to the table.
Yeah. To go on new quests.
Yes, new quests.
New quests. And to, achieve these new quests, you
Mhm.
have gone through from Changeling through Change to Quest Portal. So
Yes.
how did that opportunity come up, and what has it been like working with them as a company? Or being part of that? You're not working with them, you are part of that company.
Mhm. Yeah, so, it is sort of a wild, uh, story. I think, I don't even know how to start. Essentially, um, one of Carlos's friends, works there, and, they invited us to, visit their offices in Iceland, and we didn't
Hmm.
know them, and we were like, "Okay, like, is this real or not real?"
Yeah.
Um, but they ended up showing us, like, how, like, their vision for tabletop RPGs and how passionate they were and how honestly different it is working for a company in the United States versus working in a company in Iceland. There's just a lot of different, culture,
Yeah.
like, things that I thought was so interesting, and so we had this wild vacation with, our new friends in Iceland, and at the end of this vacation, they offered me a job,
Oh, wow.
and so I didn't go in thinking that, like, this was an opportunity. It was
Yeah.
more of, like, curiosity for me, but also, like, I don't know why I didn't think it was, even though it was so very clearly looking back on it,
Yeah.
courtship.
You went for curiosity and experience, and they were
Yeah.
courting you into
Yes.
working with them, which is
And it
fair.
worked. I mean, the team is so passionate and so good at what they do. a lot of them are like award-winning designers in Iceland,
Hmm.
and developers, and um, really know how to make a product that has like this like has thoughtfulness and accessibility in mind.
Yeah.
So everything is so user friendly, which is good for me because I have ADHD and it's hard for me to learn VTTs that are very number heavy or very like code heavy. Like
Yeah.
it's hard for my brain to lock into it.
Well, while we stick on this
Yeah.
sort of revelation that you actually went to Iceland for a job interview and not
Yes.
just a nice holiday. Um, as their sort of head of marketing and communications, could you
Yes.
give a sales pitch? What is Quest Portal VTT?
Ooh, a sales pitch. Okay. Quest Portal is a virtual tabletop that is geared for players who love the theater of the mind experience. Not only do we have maps and map tools, but we also have animated scenes and a a character generator to generate your own character portrait for your game or your NPCs in your game. So the idea is to make role playing more accessible,
Mm.
and make that art accessible as well with world building at its core. So we're working on a ton of new features that have more robust notes and world building aspects to them.
Well, I was using it a
Yes.
little bit earlier today just to sort of refamiliarize myself with it because I
Mhm.
used a number of different VTTs, and it's certainly a clean and clear and very user friendly interface. There's there's lights and music which you can turn
Yeah.
on and off if you want to. Character generation from scratch is very simple. There's very easy examples to drag and drop. The dice rolling is very straightforward and very clearly displayed. Making new scenes is very easy. There's a lot of things that I am very excited for with Quest Portal. Just having spent an hour or two earlier today and an hour or two when we started sort of emailing back and forth about this interview, and so I could understand it. And it takes no time at all to pick it up. There's definitely, as you say, there's no heavy numbers or
Mhm.
complicated background macros, for example, to sort of try and get your head around. It's really good. Um, so I'm very excited to see where that leads. As for yourself, where is it you're leading next? Obviously, you're sort of working with Quest Portal, but
Mhm.
you do find some downtime occasionally to appear on other shows. So, what's it been like appearing on sort of game shows and yeah, we'll go with game shows.
It's just been a ton of fun. I'm very fortunate in that I get to play games with my friends and there is a camera there and that's cool, but I love uh just playing ridiculous games
Mm,
like with all of the people I've met out here. The cool thing about doing shoots is also that like it's not a long commitment. It's, an afternoon and you shoot an episode and you're done.
yeah.
So, there's not a ton of balance that happens there other than shooting a season of something that, is a little heavier. But showing up for an afternoon to, uh, get answers wrong on, actually it's great.
Uh, yeah, and you were on Dirty Laundry. I
Dirty
watched a clip of that.
laundry.
Yeah, very entertaining. Well worth checking out as well. So, you have this joyful soul and this exuberance for the games. With respect to the characters you have played,
Mhm.
who of the characters you played in any of the systems you've sort of been involved with, which character to you has sort of stood out the most or meant the most to you, and why?
Such a good question. I I have 2, for very different reasons. One, is the very first D&D character I've ever played. Her name is Bugfly. Um, and I think that for me, she was really important because prior to that podcast and becoming a part of the tabletop RPG space, I was an actor. And I think that when you're an actor, there's so much restriction that they put on you,
Mm.
especially if you're like a woman or femme presenting. So a lot of the roles I was getting and auditioning for were very much the girlfriend or
Right.
the teen mom or um, a bank teller.
Mm.
Very like roles that just didn't speak to my heart or to like my own weirdness. And so I think with Bugfly, I was fully unhinged and fully just a big giant chaos goof, and I got to do that for the first time and be really funny and
Mm.
show that I am actually funny and not like just I don't know, not. And then the other one is Binks from A
Mm.
Court of Fey and Flowers. I think that there were so many layers to her that it was hard not to fall in love with everything that they stood for and everything that um, they were afraid of.
Yeah.
Because I think there were some real of parts of myself that I put in that character, especially coming out of lockdown and being alone. I think that I channeled some of that into her.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. No. Thank you for those insights. It's good to know that you're not just generic bank teller number one
Yes.
in whatever. Uh,
Oh my
so
gosh.
much more.
I
So,
don't know
yeah.
if sorry, this is such a
No,
tangent.
please. No, please.
um I don't know if you're allowed to put this in, but you might be. One time I did a shoot for Best Western, no, for Wells Fargo, and on that shoot, I was a bank teller named Amy Wong, and then they called me back because they needed me to be a personal banker, and my name was Maria Ramirez. Like they just cast me twice as two different ethnicities.
Wow. That's a testament to your range,
Yep,
I
I have good
guess.
range.
That's clearly what it was. They
Yep.
saw talent,
Yes.
a gem in the
A
banking world,
gem.
maybe. Um, so, yeah,
Yep.
I got no issues leaving that in. So, um, with respect to your all your outputs, the shows, the writing, and your work with Quest Portal,
Mhm.
the fantastic work you do with them. Do you get much downtime in that respect?
Oh boy. No. If I'm gonna be honest. I'd say that I am doing better, much better at balancing my life, but uh, there's a thing where a lot of the things that I love
Hmm.
uh, are my hobbies, and my hobbies are within the space. And so a lot of the times it's me just i- like doing what I love, but I know that it is also work.
Yeah.
So it's sort of this dichotomy of some days are you just want to veg in front of Netflix
Yeah.
or play a lot of video games. I play so much like on the Switch before I go to bed. That's my ritual from like 9 p.m. and onward. That is what I am doing.
I'm sure I've seen many a
Yeah.
Pokemon post.
Yes.
Pokemon? Yeah. Yeah.
Pokemon, yep. Played almost every Pokemon game there is, except for I think a few that were on the one before the 3DS,
Yeah. That
the
one.
Game Boy Advance. Yeah,
That's
I
it. Yeah.
didn't play
Yeah. Yeah.
those.
All right. That's still an impressive run of games, to be honest. That is impressive. So you've almost caught them all, bar the ones previous.
Yes. Yes,
Wow.
almost. I am a Pokemon master for sure.
That is an endeavor in itself. Wow. Wow. Full respect to you for that. So beyond So we are recording this, and I'll stop saying "so" at the start of every sentence. Beyond the start of 2023, where we are now, and the potential fiasco tonight.
Mhm.
It is fiasco tonight, but beyond the fiasco that it could be tonight, what it does 2023 have in store for you, Serena?
Um, I think that probably more of the same. I think that I've hit a really um, healthy stride in my approach to my life and where I want to put my energy. I think that it's really easy, especially when you have ADHD, to get very distracted and
Hmm,
to run towards everything shiny and say yes and overcommit yourself. But I think I'm doing better at being mindful with my projects and the people I surround myself with. I'm a big vibes person. It doesn't matter to me whether or not somebody has a ton of followings or a big opportunity for me. If the vibes are wrong, it's not worth it to me.
of course, yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I'm personally excited to see where 2023, 2024, and
Mhm.
onwards sort of
Yeah.
takes you, us, and Quest Portal, to be fair.
Mhm.
I failed to mention a little earlier when we were speaking about it. For those that sort of sign up to Quest Portal at the moment, you get a free Call of
Mhm.
Cthulhu module. So it's well worth going on, checking it out, signing up. And getting used to the interface there. Don't I promise you it doesn't take long. So please check out Quest Portal. That's my sales pitch. There you go.
Thank you. It was very good.
That's all right. Um, as we sort of move towards the close of this interview, Serena, we've spoken about a lot. Is there anything that we haven't brought up yet you would like to bring up now?
Oh boy. I I can't think of anything we haven't covered. I feel like I just pelted you with a bunch of information. I'm just like, here's everything. So, but yeah, I'm trying to think and I don't know.
That's fair enough. It was
Okay.
not a trick question or a trap.
Okay.
I'll ask you one sidetrack question. Going back to what we've not long spoken about, your favorite Pokemon,
Yes.
since you are a master.
Oh, this is such a hard question. I think okay. I think that I'm gonna pick Squirtle,
Nice.
because they are OG
Hmm.
and, the joy I get when I see them in any game is, I think, more lasting than Fuecoco, who is my child in this current game.
Massive respect for Squirtle. So I'm glad you picked
Yes.
Squirtle.
Mhm.
Uh, Serena, so that we can follow and support you and sort of carry on following your adventures wherever they lead us, would you like to remind everybody where we can find you on social media, please?
Sure, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Serena X Marie, or if you like cozy illustrations, you can hit me up on Instagram at Serena Isabee. You can check out the Dungeon Run. It is every Wednesday. Most every Wednesday, we have a little bit of an off week, and yeah, and there are I don't. Yes, okay. There are more things on the horizon for me that I can't talk about, and so keep an eye out on my social media for all of that.
All right. Well, I will make sure links are down in the description below
Mhm.
this podcast and update the links as things do come in. I'll make sure there's a link to Quest Portal as well.
Yes,
Uh,
please.
no, not at all. Uh, Serena, it's been an absolute pleasure getting the chance to talk to you, learn about your progression through the TTRPG space. Are you doing any more writing in the future? Is that something you can't mention, or have you sort of put the writing to one side in that respect?
Yes, I will be writing in the future. I can't talk about it, but there will be something very cool happening later this year.
I look forward to hearing more about it, as I'm sure everybody else will be. Uh, but yeah, I'd love to get you back on the show, be it more show related, Quest Portal related, new releases, or anything else that comes up. I'd love to get you back on the show in the future if you'd be willing to join me.
Oh my gosh, of course. This has been such a pleasant conversation. Like, thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to chat anytime.
Not a problem. Thank you, Surena, so much for joining me. We'll definitely speak again in the future.
Thank you for listening. If you'd like to learn more about the show, then go to www.snydersreturn.squarespace.com. Alternatively, you can find us over on Twitter @ReturnSnyder. We have a Linktree link in the description of this episode. And if you want to support us, come and join us over on Patreon. And we also have a Discord server. Please leave us a review, because we'd love to learn how to improve the channel and provide better content out for those who are listening. Until we speak again, thank you.